So, it's really strange. I think many people would find this really strange, but as a strategy prof, I actually don't like a lot of the strategy. I don't like how many people view strategy. I don't like the strategizing stuff that you often see. And it's sort of more, when you say strategizing, it creates this perspective in many people that they're thinking of, how can I screw other people over in the short term? That's ultimately what they're thinking of. They're thinking of very much in the short term, I want to get ahead of everybody else. And the problem with that is it creates a lot of nasty behavior, and it doesn't create good culture. It doesn't help anybody. And it really deteriorates a lot of what's going on around you. I think a better way to frame strategy and to frame, how do you get ahead, is to think about, like, how can I help people? How can I do things that will be beneficial to other people? That sort of mindset is completely different in terms of what's going on than how can I get ahead, or how can I strategize to do something so that I could be better than everybody else, right? This idea that we're in a competitive marketplace, which kinda we are, but kinda not. So the reason why we're not is that we don't live in a world where there's a fixed pie. And we also have dynamics where we can accumulate things if you simply try or work at something. So you actually get better at it, right? That's what I'm saying. Or maybe you get, extra resources, whatever. This sort of idea of strategizing says, hey, I've got fixed resources right now, and I have to maximize those resources so that I can get ahead of somebody else that's beside me. And that's ultimately what it's about, or ultimately behind the sort of logic of it. That's a small portion of strategy right now, but it's still a discussion within the research and sort of the competitive strategy stuff. It's really this, and from an academic point of view, I think a lot of people understand what I'm talking about, but I think a lot of people view it as this is an interesting phenomenon that goes on, right? This is not sort of a normative thing where I'm, or this is not a, I forget the term, but I'm trying to be helpful here to get you to think about different things. But the idea of that you can get ahead in the short term, it definitely happens, right? You can benefit a lot by competitive strategy in the short term. And maybe over the long term, you incrementally eke your way up by doing that. But you leave a lot of carnage behind you. A lot of people, you just leave a lot of bad taste in people's mouth. And you really have to take a step back and say, is that the kind of person that I want to be? Now, given that we live in a world where we can accumulate things, some people talk about abundance and all of that kind of stuff. I think that's kind of like willy-nilly stuff. But, thinking of that, if you apply yourself and you incrementally keep working at it, it does get better over time. You can work with people where you help them, or you think about ways that you can raise them up too, because often if you raise up other people, it comes full circle, right? Like, that's how you actually build something over time, is you help as many people as you possibly can. And that, that's where you're thinking of, how can I do better? And really it's thinking of, what is it that we can improve? What is it that we really, that could make us just work a little bit more efficiently or be, helpful? Whatever it is, right? Like that, it's a completely different story. And you're going to wind up doing completely different things than if you are thinking about strategizing and thinking about how can you ultimately get ahead. So if I can encourage you to think about, it's all about being helpful. It's all about thinking of what is it that I can possibly do to help other people around me, and then eventually, right? So this is called value creation. It's just really thinking about how can I be helpful? What is it that sort of benefits other people around me? And then eventually thinking about, okay, eventually it's going to get so good. I'm providing so much help that eventually somebody's going to want to pay for this particular thing, right? So it's thinking of that combination of value capture or value creation and value capture, where you are trying to be helpful. You just want to be helpful. You want to help other people. And then thinking about what is the right combination of that value that's being created. How can you capture some of that value? What does that actually look like in terms of you capturing that particular value? That part is a little hard of the figuring out how to capture value, but if you're helpful for a long time, you'll figure it out in terms of that value capture. So, what do I mean by that? Let's say you're baking cakes and you like to bake cakes. Well, then you start baking cakes for everybody in the neighborhood, and you just do that until, one day somebody says, hey, do you want to bake this cake for my nephew's birthday party? I'll pay you $20. And then you say, well, you know what? $20 is great, but it costs $20 for me to make this thing. What if you paid me $50? And then they're like, yeah, sure. And then that's how it sort of works out, right? Where you are not being, you're not being exploitive in any sort of way. You are, trying to be helpful and try to be a nice person. And I think this framing is far different and far better than that sort of, competitive strategy or the, what was it? There's that Chinese philosopher from like 3,000 years ago. I forget the guy's name. The art of war guy that wrote about the art of war, and people talking about all this kind of stuff, which is ultimately just nonsense because it doesn't benefit anybody. It's very short term. A lot of people are you're not gonna feel good. They're not gonna feel good. I think a better way to frame it is thinking about how can I be helpful, and then when I'm helpful, how can I actually get value from me being helpful as well, where people respect what I'm doing and people like what I'm doing. That's a different mindset, a different way of framing the situation, where you're not sort of pushing your way through, and instead you're thinking about how can I leverage what's already existing, and how can I benefit other people. And at the same time, as I benefit other people, I'm going to try to get a little bit of that benefit myself. So I just want you to think about that in terms of strategizing. Not a big fan of strategizing. A, it oftentimes doesn't work. B, it sort of creates a sort of nasty culture. C, you can't sort of forecast the future. There's lots of different things that happen. So you'd be better off just, doing your thing, being helpful, being nice. And then if you do that, you'll figure it out as you go. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.